When they come in. Right, so welcome back everybody from your break. I hope you had a nice the refreshments. So they're usually really nice here. So I would, without further ado, I would like to introduce Kim Nicholas, Kath Donnelly, and Misha Malone, and they are a fantastic team from the Somerset Cancer Registry. So I know you're going to have lots of questions for them as well. They'll be delivering some information and essential interactive training that's crucial to your roles. And they'll be hosting 2 sessions with a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to ask some questions. We expect you to have lots of questions for them. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you ladies. Would you like to come forward?
Hi everyone, so it's just me for the first part. I'm Misha, one of the trainers at SCR, or maybe better known as Somerset to you all. So to begin, I want to touch on our training resources, and then we will move on to the non-primary pathways, and we have a few sessions in the afternoon as well. So we've just launched our new learning platform, Learn Somerset. We launched back in December 2024. So we are in the process of switching over our customers from our previous learning management system to Learn Somerset. And at the end of July, we will be discontinuing our previous learning management system. So Learn Somerset holds all of our training resources, which are found on the home page in the various tiles. And we do have a short video in a moment to show this. But we've got the watch, learn and read tiles, and they can all be found in the find learning page as well. So I'll just show you the video. And unfortunately, our training manager couldn't be here today, but she has pre-recorded this video for us.
So this is the login screen, and as you can see, there's links here for forgotten password, create new account, and also a checkbox to remember username if the user wishes to. Then once logged in, you're taken to the home page, and at the top here is our carousel, where you'll see the latest news, and that could be details of upcoming events, details of new training resources, or any top tips and important information we want to share with you. Use the circles in the bottom right to scroll between the slides. And then next is the tiles, and these take you to various learning materials as detailed in the tile. And then from the top of the page, you can view your record of learning, and this includes both completed and in-progress modules. And any certificates of learning from the previous LMS can be uploaded as other evidence. Moving on to finding what you need, we've tried to make this as easy as possible for you. So you can filter by category, you can filter by tags, or you can use the search bar. And each type of learning material is colour-coded, so you can easily find the type of resource that you need. So our e-learning modules are colour-coded blue, our How Do I guides are green, our videos are navy, and the release materials are orange. So let's take a closer look at an e-learning module. I'm going to use the tags down the side. I'm going to select palliative care. And that will come up with any training materials relative to palliative care. So I'm going to select the e-learning. Each e-learning module course has an introduction at the top, and then the modules are listed down the centre. And as you work through those, you work towards doing the knowledge check at the end. And once that's complete, you'll be given a certificate. As you work through the modules, you'll see your progress to the right. And you'll also see useful resources there as well. So for palliative care e-learning, we've popped a link into the palliative care user guide. So that brings us nicely onto How Do I guides. I'm just going to select the palliative care user guide. The guides open up in a new window. And as before, we hold guides for our current release and a previous release. Similar to the e-learning, we've got related courses down the right-hand side of the guide, so any courses related to palliative care will be displayed there. Lastly, if you need help, we've got you covered. Selecting help will take you to a page that includes details of how to raise any issues with Learn Somerset, along with some useful FAQs and guidance there as well. So before we migrate your organisation over to Learn Somerset, we need a couple of things from you. Firstly, we need you to set up a group mailbox for admin users. This will be the email address that receives notification for your organisation. You will be notified when someone sets up an account and selects you as their admin lead. We also would like users to download evidence of learning from their current LMS if they wish. So certificates can be downloaded, saved locally and uploaded as other evidence to Learn Somerset. Accounts will be transferred over to Learn Somerset. However, a user's record of learning will not be. By downloading any completed module certificates, a user can upload these to Learn Somerset for them to form part of their learning record. Once this is done, you have two options. The first is to migrate user accounts from LMS to Learn Somerset. But please note, migrating previous accounts from LMS will essentially just move their account details across. So this will include their name, email, username, and organisation. Option 1 is a more time-consuming and manual process, as it involves you checking all active accounts that are on LMS. Or you can simply start afresh on Learn Somerset. Users can set up their own accounts. No migration is required from LMS. Once the prereqs are complete and you've let us know what you've decided to do with the options, you're ready to migrate and we'll be in touch to arrange this with you. So when you migrate, on the day of migration, we'll send you the most up-to-date learning stats from LMS for your organisation. We'll provide you with a link for Learn Somerset and some guidance for first login. On first login, each user will see a user tour, which takes them around the system. We'll also provide guidance for managers. As we migrate organisations, we're building up a suite of FAQs. And also, and more importantly than anything, will be on hand to support you. If you are unsure of your organisation's status of migration over to Learn Somerset, you can discuss this with the SCR training team rep that's there with you today, or you can contact us via the email address on the screen. Those of you who have already migrated, we hope you enjoy using the new system. And just a note before we finish, we will be turning off the old LMS on the 31st of July 2025. We look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
So I hope if anyone is familiar with our old learning management system, you'll agree that that's a much more modern system. So we will begin with our non-primary pathway session. And Kim and Catherine are going to help me with this.
Yes, indeed. So our intent for today is we're going to follow what Paul has done. So Paul talked about non-primary pathways, and now we're following with a session with information about non-primary pathways on SCR. And then Paul's got another presentation this afternoon, and then we'll be following that with some tips for how to do what he's going to talk about this afternoon on SCR. And earlier, Paul presented on the different types of non-primaries. So you explained recurrences, progressions, transformations, and that kind of thing. And we're just going to go through one by one and just touch on each of them with regard to SCR. But firstly, in the interval, I popped some slides on your table, which are quite a small flowchart. Apologies, we can only print in black and white and A4. So this is available in our help guides. But this basically just shows if a referral comes in at the top, the decisions you need to make to decide whether to pop it on the system as a recurrence, progression, transformation, or relapse, and what you need to do on SCR as a result. So you've got a small and slightly blurry copy in front of you. I'd recommend in the user guides you can zoom in and check it out, but that's quite a helpful resource that mirrors the one Paul showed earlier, but with a greater focus on doing it on SCR. So, briefly, these are where to find all the fields you need to fill in. They're all in our diagnostic section. So, all on that first tab for the most part, apart from the metastases, which are on the Mets at Diagnosis tab, which is the third tab along, I believe. So that's where to find them. And without further ado, we're going to go into recurrence. So I'm going to talk through this slide, and then we will nip onto the system and just pop on a recurrence. So to recap Paul's definition, a recurrence is when a patient has previously been informed they're free of cancer or the disease isn't detectable, and that could have happened a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. But sadly, in the scenario we're going to look at, they've had their treatment, they've had their follow-up, and they've been back to the GP, who's been re-referred with a suspected recurrence of that breast cancer. And there are 2 other scenarios we cover in our guides around recurrence as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out of the PowerPoints and we're going to go into our training system. Now we've got some patients we've popped on there today, and we're going to grab our recurrence one. You can see they've only got one referral, which is their original breast referral back in 2023, and we're going to add the recurrence on. So to do that, Misha's going to create a brand new referral, and it's going to be a breast one. So for today, we're just going to do all the key fields and not do any investigations or anything, but just where things need to be filled in. So we're just going to mirror the fact that it's a recurrent one, so it's important to pop it on as a suspected recurrence. And then we'll pop the key dates in. And once we've got that, we've effectively got 2 referrals for this patient, one back in 2023, one now in 2025. At the moment, they're unlinked, but we can link them later down the line. The horror.
Thanks, Catherine.
Little voice from the corner. Lovely. So when we click save, it'll say, do you want to link it? So you can do it now, or you can do it at the end by using the admin menu. So we'll say, okay, let's do it, because we know we have got one to link to. It will show you all the things it thinks it could link it to. And this patient's only got one, and luckily that's the right one. So we're going to say, yep, go ahead and link, and then click OK. And we'll say no to entering investigations. And if we come out, and if we can come out one more time, Misha, sorry, just to show that now on the overview you can see there's a little link between those 2 referrals. So we've now got our suspected recurrence. And if we go in and add a diagnosis of confirmed recurrence, we could then, if we wished, track them on our PTLs. So at the moment, this one would be on our 28-day diagnosis PTL. I know a lot of people in the room, I think you've got your own trust PTLs. But if you were to use our SCR ones, they're now on the 28-day pathway. So they would be subject to that PTL. So we'll just pop some dates in. So they've now got a diagnosis of recurrent cancer, but not yet a treatment planned for it. So just fill in a couple of essentials. You'll see the primary diagnosis is the same as previously. Lovely, and that should be enough to save it. Happy days. So we've got our referral, we've got our diagnosis. Misha, if you could come out to the home screen, I'll just go quickly into the PTL. So tracking PTL report to CWT. We'll run it as of today because we know the pathway's open. We're going to run DTT to treatment, and then we'll pick the right cancer site, which is breast, and then run it. And with any luck, they won't be up at the top because we don't have a decision to treat yet, so they're not formally on the 31-day pathway. But we know we've got a diagnosis, so we are likely to need to treat them, so they're in the bottom right box, diagnosed referrals without a DTT or ECAD date. So if we were to go into there, we would find our person listed. And then as soon as you do pop a date decision to treat on there, they would move up to the top table, and then you could track them along that 31-day pathway. And the other thing I wanted to cover on the system just very quickly is if we go back to the home screen, what I was going to do is show you the linking. So if you didn't link when you initially created it, you can go to the admin screen And if you just go to link and unlink referrals, which is about halfway down, just grab the NHS number to make it easier, lovely, and then go to link unlink, pick recurrences, and then you can find your patient in there, and then once you've got them, you could do it that way. And because it's already linked, there's nothing more we can link, but we could unlink it at this point. So that's it in terms of recurrence. So it's the only one where a completely separate referral should be created on SCR. So now you've got two. So you've got the original one, which sent information up to CWT and COSD in the first instance. And now we've got the brand new one that will as well. So that was recurrence on the system. So some top tips. As we saw, you can unlink referrals via the admin screens or relink them. If you do unlink it, it will need a brand new PPI number, and you will need to be careful to make sure that the patient status on that unlinked referral is correct. And also, there's a number of recurrence-specific treatment event types, so you'd need to make sure to pick one of those. So a local, regional, distant recurrence, or multiple recurrence, or a relapse. So just make sure you've got the right option on there, really. Lovely. So that's it for recurrence, apart from what it's eligible to be tracked in. So as you can see on the screen, it's eligible for the 28-day pathway and the decision to treat to treatment pathway. So for a recurrence, you will see those targets appear on your screen until the pathway is completed. And then it would also appear in our tracking documents, such as our PTLs. Once the pathway is closed, it would then appear in our CWT reporting documents. So we've got on the screen there just why each of them would appear in those different reports in there. So that is recurrence, and we're going to move swiftly on to progression. And I'm going to have a little sit down. Over to you two.
Hi, thank you. Just a note on that. We showed you a 2-week wait referral in for a recurrence, but if you get an upgrade in, you would just follow the same process for upgrade. So we just showed you one scenario. There are several. And if you've got any questions about that, please do ask. Okay, so for progression, I'm actually going to drive. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Shove
that's
you in.
fine.
Do you want to go and sit down?
I can.
Go and sit down. I'm not a good team player, so I need to drive myself. So from a progression perspective, you could, so if you don't have any original primary information on record at all, can't get it from the patient or from the registry or from any other hospital, then you can record a progression record in exactly the same way as you can just record a recurrence. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to record a progression on a primary record that you've got within your actual system already. So recap on the definition is when a cancer spreads it or gets worse, it's called a progression. And you would use the same definition as is available as Paul has described or in the user guide for that one. So the scenario we're going to use is the patient has received treatment for an existing breast cancer. They've had chemotherapy, but they're still under active monitoring, and they have had concerning results back, and a progression has been identified. So the way we would record that on the SCR system would be, you would search for your patient as you would normally using the patient search. You would come across their original primary record on the system, and then based on the information that you'd been provided by your clinicians, you would then click on this Add Progression. Now, depending on what cancer site you're on, because we're on a breast cancer site, you only get a progression option, but if you're on other cancer sites, you might get an option for transformation or progression or relapse, and we're going to show you an example of that after this. So you would click on Add Progression. Because it's a a progression, you won't have to record staging information, but what you do need to do is identify that this appended record, you've got to give it a patient status. So let's say it's been diagnosed, but there's no treatment yet planned for it. You need the diagnosis date, which might be the date of the report that identified it as a progression. I'm going to say it's today's date. And then what you do need to do is also record the location of that progression. So it could be that it's lymph nodes, or it could have spread to the liver, lung, wherever it may be. You would record how certain that was as well, because the certainty will depend on whether that metastatic data gets reported to COSD. So if you say certain, it definitely gets reported. If you're uncertain, it won't be reported until it's been confirmed. And then you would identify what the type of that spread was. So in this instance, we're going to call it regional. And you can add additional sites. So if there is more, then you can add that information through too. Actually, let's say that's a certain one. And then we call that distant. And then when you're satisfied that everything's been recorded, then you click on save. And that then identifies a record has been added. You would close out of that. And then if we look at how that looks on the system, you've now got this progression section here. Now this section is also available within the MDT pro forma, so if ever you do have time or your MDTs provide you with that information, then you could record that data during the MDT. And it looks exactly the same as this. You get the same screens and the same options. And you can add multiple progressions, so each time. So even if this record is several years old, 10 years old, however many years, as soon as you add a progression to it, it will then wrap all of that data up and then report all of that back to the registries again. If you record another progression, it would do exactly the same thing. And from an XML perspective, that will then appear within that file as a progression of that primary record. So top tips are, so we've got the user guide that explains all of that. On the piece of paper you've got in front of you there, there's also that pathway is actually identified too. So if the original primary data is not known, this is when you can add an orphan record, and that's what we're calling. So the recurrence record isn't an orphan record, but a progression record or a transformation record would be, but you would record them in exactly the same way if you don't have the original primary data. And then, again, the scenario we used, you're not measuring the patient on a 62-day, you're not measuring them on a 28-day, because the progression has been identified while they're still on a primary pathway, but you are tracking them on a 31-day decision to treat. And you would add any treatment or any MDT or any other information about that patient to that primary record, and that would then get reported along with the progression record. And the patient would appear on the PTL in the same way as was identified by Kim on the recurrence. Okay, so now I'm going to drive, is that right? And you're going to talk through.
It's me again. We're going to finish on transformations. So we will look at the hematology cancer site for this, and this is when there is a change in the cancer type, and it does only affect the hematology, brain CNS and sarcoma sites. The scenario we're using on the system today is that the patient has received a primary diagnosis of CLL and has commenced a course of anti-cancer drugs as their first treatment. The patient then notices a change in symptoms and becomes quite unwell, and then on further investigations, it's discovered that the cancer has transformed to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
You got it. Sorry, I should have backed out of my patient.
So this is our transformation patient. They already have their primary on SCR. And as the same way as Catherine just demonstrated, from the diagnosis section this time, because we're using the haematology cancer site, we have the options of relapse and transformation. We just used the breast site, so that was only progression available. This time we'll select add transformation. Then we'll set the patient status. Again, this is marked by a red asterisk, so it has to be entered for the page to save. We're going to enter our morphology. Top one.
Okay, thank you.
And also our IC details. And then save. Back on the patient overview, again in the diagnosis section, you'll see that the transformation record has been added. So it is important to note as well that if your referral was a benign referral and then it transformed from a D code to a C code, you would have to add it as a primary referral. So we have a few points to note on this as well.
Do I need to go back in here?
PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
So this is tracked as the same way as all the other non-primary referrals, which is nice and simple. So it'll be on the DTT PTL, and then once they have a DTT, it will drop off 7 days post-treatment start date. Finally, there is a relapse option, but this is treated as a recurrence, and as soon as the relapse record is added, the tumour status does become the recurrence. So haematology cancers can relapse multiple times, and when the COSD monthly download is run, any relapse records created within the date parameters are included in the download as recurrences, because the monthly downloads includes any records that have been added or edited in that period, and the original primary record the relapse was recorded against will also be included in the download. So we don't want to overwhelm you with that, so there are training resources for it. We have a variety of e-learning modules. We do have a non-primary pathway course coming soon, but there's a recurrence course and also a PTL module. And there's also various guides which are on the customer website and also Learn Somerset. So that rounds up non-primary pathways. Were there any questions?
I think just to touch on, obviously you'll all be really familiar with SCR, you use it an awful lot, so obviously you'll have put on a lot of these, but the reason we wanted to do them one after the other is just to follow through on the fact that they are different, and there are slightly different things that you would need to do on SCR accordingly.
Can I just ask a question? Can I just so we get it recorded? So you said the relapse is the same as a recurrence for haematology. Is that what you said? Am I right with that?
The status will go on as a recurrence.
As a
so when
recurrence.
you select the status, it would be
A
the
recurrence.
status as a recurrence.
Okay.
But you wouldn't complete a new referral like you would for recurrence.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's a bit confusing because obviously for recurrence you have to create a whole new referral. But if we actually go and pop a relapse on quickly just to see what the options are. Oh, it's fine. It's in the patient status there. We've got diagnosis of recurrent cancer confirmed. So that's what we mean by it does go on as a recurrence, is the patient's status is that of a recurrent cancer.
So it doesn't need a new record?
No, you
No.
wouldn't need a new record for that, absolutely.
Because then when you create a relapse record, you get the source of referral for outpatients has got to be recorded for COSD, and you've got to put in a palliative care specialist scene indication code as well, which you don't do if you record a progression.
Got another question here.
So it's just on the transformations of D codes. So when they go from a D code to a C code, do you add it as a new transformation record, or do you put the transformation on the non-cancer D code record?
You would record a new primary for
New
the
primary.
registrable condition.
So I'm thinking more like, so the polycythemias, for example, that then transform to an AML or an ALL, because all of those polycythemias normally go as a D code and a non-cancered on Somerset.
I'll ask Paul. Sorry.
Don't worry, Paul, I've got another mic.
Because you can record the new morphology on the original record,
Yeah.
but
So you
and that would get reported to COSD, and then you would expect a new primary record, which you would then link together. And they would have brand new PPIs, I'm presuming, because it's a new condition.
Yeah, so I mean, what I think we're going to find doing this and talking to people and telling this is, as more people are doing it, is situations that possibly weren't envisioned previously, you know, in situations. What I would say for now is, what we're sticking with is record a new primary for that. Because it's changing from a D code to a C code, please record it as a new primary.
Okay.
And we'll stick with that for now. And if anything changes in the guidance, I'll let people know.
Paul, is it worth, if there are any occurrences that don't quite fit the scenario, is it worth them getting in touch with you, for example, so that you can log that? Not
absolutely.
Everyone get Paul's email address. But just so that you can keep a log of maybe some of the variations that haven't been considered?
Yeah, 'cause as time goes on, we find more and more the real life doesn't fit into the nice boxes that we like to try and fit it into. And as things change and, I don't know, technology's changed and things get more and more refined, we really need to keep up with this stuff. So yeah, anything you're all doing that's like that, yeah, please get in touch. Yeah.
Any more questions?
And we'll work with Paul to make sure that we've got those scenarios in our user guidance as well.
Can I jump in while I've got a mic?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So while you're there, would you mind just jumping into the recurrence patient and showing them where to find and record the metastatic disease
Oh, yeah.
on there, please? And just by doing it, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I think it's really, really useful.
Okay, so, sorry, let me go into that one. So it's exactly the same layout as if you were recording a primary. So it's the same fields, same options. It's just the tumour status and patient status that indicate that it's a recurrence. So you would then go into the Mets diagnosis tab. And that's where it's a replica of what we saw in the progression field. So you've got the same list of options. Again, it's only those marked as certain that will get reported in the COSD file. And you've got your types there as well. And so you can have multiples of information. You don't need to worry about staging for any kind of recurrence, progression, or transformation because it's all subsequent. So you don't need to record staging. That's just purely for primary diagnoses. Thank you.
Wait, she's behind you.
Sorry, I don't know if it's just us because we're from Alderhay, but when you're looking at your screen, ours doesn't look like that. We haven't had the upload yet or the upgrade. But on the diagnosis, we've actually got a tab for progression and recurrence as well as the diagnosis. And I can't remember off the top of my head if transformations on there. So when we're recording recurrences, we're not doing a new profile for the patients. We're uploading our recurrences as part of that tab. But when I played around with it in the past and I've done it just out of curiosity, it's because you can create a recurrence from a new profile. When our clinician at MDT has asked us what was the previous MDT outcome from the last time they presented, you cannot see a copy of that MDT outcome. So while we're typing live at MDT, we have to stop typing to go back to get that patient's record to look at the past MDT outcome for them to see it, and it's not linking. But you're typing live at MDT, So you're missing a chunk of the discussion because you're showing them what the old discussion was. Is there any way that can be linked? Or is it linked with the new Somerset?
There is a button, so I need to find a patient who's got 2 referrals. So what you should have is at the footer of, in your MDT pro forma, and within the patient record, you should have this View All MDTs button, which will actually then collate all of the MDTs that the patient has been discussed at, regardless of whether it's the same pathway.
Okay.
And so that should be a way for you to see, because you've got all of your referrals here. So you've got each referral listed, so you can focus on one particular referral, or if you leave it as all, it should show you all of the MDT comments and what the treatment and intent was and what the MDT meeting and date was. I think it might be worth actually seeing how your records look, so that we can advise you fully on that one.
Yeah. I mean, we are working on the old system and we are waiting for the upgrade. But I was just wondering if anyone else has got those tabs on the diagnosis along, because we were also missing, I think is it one of the breast staging. So if we get a child who comes with breast cancer, there was one, is it the fidget or the staging that, like, we were below our 80% target because we couldn't get this child's staging because we didn't have that tab on our Somerset. So for that reason, we were penalised because we only had about, say, 6 patients who were stageable, but we could only stage 7. So it looked massive on our...
I told you not to worry about that. It happens. And sometimes it is the nature of what you do, like you say. Unfortunately, one patient, you can have a massive implication on numbers. And we know that. You know I'm never going to chase you on that. The rest of you I will, though. But everyone else, it doesn't make... one patient missing doesn't make a difference to what you're doing, and that's why the target is 80% and not 100%. You know, we push it as far as we can. But, yeah, we're aware that...
Yeah. Who puts... So if we want to do that in the future and we get another patient like that, who is responsible for putting that staging on our Somerset page?
Some patients, it's just not possible.
Okay.
And I say in the bigger picture of a bigger trust, it's those one patients don't have a massive impact. You can probably still have 10% worth of those patients and reach 90%, let's say, or at least 80%. It's just unfortunate. You know, and that's why anything that we do, everything we view, has to be taken with a view of local knowledge, things like that. When we're looking at the recurrence progression stuff, I was saying, like, people like yourselves, Heart and Chest, Liverpool Women's, the Walton, may all come out different in the wash. We're not looking at like for like across the frame, and we know that.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you grief about it.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anywhere for examples like that, there is somewhere that they can document that fact and it will come through to you somehow on the system, or is there not? Is it
no,
worthless
unfortunately
doing
not. They say it's tell me, I'll be aware of it.
Okay.
But no, there's a fine line, and I think this comes down to what we were talking about before as well, where you're asking the question about letting me know about things that you find that don't fit into the boxes and stuff like that. Whenever we're compiling data sets and putting together systems and doing things like that, it all has to be done with the thought that whatever we do and whatever we change impacts all of you. So the more we ask for, the more you have to do. And it's a constant balancing act for our head of data sets to try and get what's important and what's useful and what's relevant compared to what is humanly possible for you to do in your day-to-day job at the same time. So I'll be honest, things like that don't get brought in, they get left by the wayside. They kind of, because of the size, the scale of them, then, yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
This has come from Dr. Lisa Howell. She's asked, have we by any chance got a list of our confirmed cancers, like your C codes, separate to your D codes, only for the factors? Me and Nikki literally cover all the cancer patients at Alder Hay, and we don't really have much support. So sometimes when we're putting a diagnosis on, we may put the wrong C or D code. And she's asked if we got a list of benign cancers, and as well as the cancers that are confirmed as registrable cancers. Is there a list anywhere? Because she's been looking and she's asked us to, and I literally cannot find.
Yeah, so it's awkward for you being Alder Hay because you don't deal with one tumour group. It's massively across the board. We do have lists. Unfortunately, they are listed by ICD-10 code, which is where you've got the problem of going what falls under what ICD-10 code. But there is a browser where you can search things in, where we had the query the other day about the astrocytoma. That's where I found that out from, what that was, whether that was a DOC code. So we can share that, we can have conversations. We can have a look at, it's not easy. Children's, CTYA is just...
A minefield.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
No, thank you.
I've got a quick question as well. Sorry. I don't know who to direct this to, but if there's different trusts on different versions of Somerset, I believe there's like the latest versions coming through currently. Is there a time frame attached to when will everyone be on the same version at some point? Is this a tricky question? Am I allowed to ask this question?
That's new in terms of versions of Somerset, or
so that when they look at the system they're using, they've all got access to the same latest version, if you like? Or does that depend trust by trust, what they've signed up to?
So at the moment, each trust will have an upgrade where they will sign up to be upgraded to the newest version. And we only support 2 versions back. So at the moment, the latest one we provide support for is 22.1, which I think one of the trusts here is on. 22.2, sorry, which I think you're on. There's 25.1 coming out very shortly. All the key functionality of it will still work with other versions. So it won't matter if your neighbouring trust is on 24.1 and you're on 25.1. It will all still work.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
But from a COSD versioning, 22.2 has version 9, 24.1 has version 10, COSD.
Okay.
So that's the version 10 is the latest one. 24.1 is the latest one. What trust are you from?
Clatterbridge.
Okay. You've upgraded, I believe, so you should be on 24.1.
No, I don't think they have.
Yeah.
I don't think they have.
No, they
yet.
don't. Okay,
No,
you
no.
haven't.
Would be, that's
Yeah.
why I asked
We'll
the
check.
question.
I think I've
Never
got it
are.
over there. But the stage we're at the moment, we have our 25.1 release coming out very shortly. So your trusts will start being asked to upgrade to that. And it's got, I don't know if any of you use our remote monitoring follow-up, but we've now got the capability of active monitoring as well for pre-cancers and such. Active surveillance, sorry, not monitoring. Oh, gosh. It's been a long day. And also, one of the other key things there is we've added some new molecular and biomarker information in there. It's now in a separate entity and a bit more shiny. So there are a few helpful tweaks coming in that.
Which version that we're on, sorry.
We'll double check for
I
you.
ran it a week ago, so as of then, I can tell you.
Just going to disconnect.
Okay.
I can have a look.
What happens next?
These things I printed off just in case. while you come in.
We've got another question while you're looking for that, if that's okay.
Yep, fine.
Yes, it was just a quick question about recurrences.
22.2, but as of last week, so I don't know if you've...
We've had a problem in our head and neck department in the last few months where when the team are creating a recurrence referral and then they're adding the patient to the MDT, while you're live typing in the MDT, you come to the end to save and go on to your next patient and it won't save the outcome. It deletes the outcome in its entirety, and then you have to kind of go back in post-MDT, tweak the referral to take it back to a primary, add the outcome, and then go back to a suspected recurrence. Is that because there's not a diagnosis in, or it's not linked to a primary record?
So it doesn't spit out an error message or anything, it just wipes it?
It says that the patient status is incorrect.
It's because you haven't selected recurrence.
So it will say suspected recurrence.
Okay.
And
As
then-
in the tumour status. So you have to select the tumour status to get the right patient status. And you have to select a tumour status if you're going to save a diagnosis. But it should give you an error message.
Yet the patient hasn't got a diagnosis, they're a suspected recurrence.
I mean, what we could do is we could recreate one in a break
Yeah.
or something and try and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it might be a bug, but it might be that, you know, a key field is missing somewhere in the equation.
Yeah, just so that we know how to fill it out, so that we're not missing those patients, or you know what it's like in the heat of a 50-patient MDT to miss one and then the straight on to the next one anyway. But yeah, we just thought we'd check.
Okay.
Hang on.
So we have that same issue on the long one. The way we have to get around it is you have to go into the MDT screen, go into diagnosis, and then you have to take the diagnosis out and save it, which is annoying
Okay.
because then you have to go back in later to add the diagnosis back in.
Can I just ask, have you reported it to us?
It's something that's come up intermittently in the MDT.
Okay, all right.
We've not been previously recording. Sorry, we've not been previously recording these records accurately. They've been going on as primaries, or they've been added to the previous records. So it's only as we're taking more diligence that we're putting them on as recurrences. But before they've come to the MDT, it's not confirmed. But it's a suspected recurrence, so there's no diagnosis. So we can't amend the diagnosis data because there's no diagnosis. It's only when you get to MDT that they might confirm, or they might have more diagnostics to confirm. But it'll remove your outcome, basically. And what they do is they change the record to primary, they add the MDT, and then have to change the record back to...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll try and replicate that. We'll work with you during the lunch break, maybe.
Right up to your face and Paul couldn't hear.
Can you repeat that again?
It's fine. It's happens with you guys. It's fine.
Also, just to say, I've got a little questionnaire for the tables, just around, mainly around MDT actually, around what bits you use, what bits you don't use of our system, and what really frustrates you. So I'll put those out at lunchtime, but if you'd like to fill those in, it would be really, really handy to know how you all use the system, because what we're looking at doing is, our next big project is we're moving to the cloud, and that should make upgrades a lot easier, and you would be able to have more regular updates and get them more quickly. And after that, we're looking at restructuring SCR, so redesigning it so it's a lot more nice and friendly, and it doesn't have a load of unnecessary fields that you don't use and that kind of thing. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about how you use the MDT function, because when we're looking with one eye in the future in terms of if we were starting this from scratch, what would we do? How would we make it better? It's really important to know how it's used in real life and which bits you use and don't use and like and don't like. So, but if you've got any little, I don't understand why it does that, absolutely put that down on there and we can have a little look at it. Thank you.
So sorry. So one of our issues at all day is when there is an upgrade, our IT shy away from it, and we're getting emails from yourselves to say, have you upgraded, have you upgraded? So when you email us, then we've got to raise a request with IT for IT to get back to us, but by the time they get back to us, then we've got to email you back as that SCR, and we're like the middleman, and we're coordinators, but we've got no one in our corner basically trying to help us do that upgrade. So IT try and shy away from it, but at the same time, they don't know what they're doing when they're doing the upgrade. So is there any support for IT, or is there any way you guys can go straight to our IT department and speak to them and bring it up with them, rather than go through us, because it's quite frustrating for us to be the middleman. We're like ping pong, we're the ball between the both of you. No. So
if you give us your IT lead's name, email address, then
that's just a wild goose chase itself.
Yeah. Well, we're here.
So it's frustrating, and especially when we are behind, and we're still recording the 2-week waiters breaches, and we're still getting penalised through that way as well. We haven't got a cancer manager, such as yet. We've got a service manager, but they're not very much from a cancer background. They literally learn as they go, so it can be quite frustrating as well. And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I'm just a coordinator. You need to reach out to Somerset. And we've got a project manager on board, but I don't think they know what they're doing either with the upgrade.
Paul,
Yes.
sorry, is there any help from like strong arming from your side? for
Yeah,
the
I think there'll be
chief
something
exec?
coming in the quite near future, escalation-wise, for
Yeah.
trusts that aren't bought into the process and like
So-
trying to do what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Are you going from A to Z? Can you do Alder Hay first with that letter?
Yeah, I think that'll be useful.
I mean, once we do release our cloud version, it won't be an issue because at the moment, what effectively happens is you book in an upgrade and it takes one of our developers kind of a couple of hours on our end to do. So it's all, they have to physically do this, do that, do the other. But once we've got a cloud instance, effectively you can say, we want it, we'll have it done, in theory. But at the moment, we've got one pilot site we're going live in initially, and there's going to be that slow build. So that is coming in a year or two.
Yeah.
But for now, maybe strong arming or
I've got to say, Paul,
pressure exerted.
you have stepped in to try and push for us to be upgraded, but we're literally just missing that middleman who knows what they're doing. So even I can say till I'm blue in the face, and I've emailed you saying I've asked for the upgrade, and there's just I don't know where to go with it. So
Yeah, I think in the next couple of weeks, from what I can tell, there's going to be some kind of formal letters or something which will put a bit more pressure on
Okay.
to do it, and then hopefully someone will take responsibility for it
Okay.
within the trust. Yeah.
And I don't know if I heard before, but I don't know if anyone else has this issue. So if you put a diagnosis on, so if a patient's got a diagnosis and they go to MDT, and if you're pulling that MDT outcome to send to the initial trust that referred over to yourselves, the diagnosis gets wiped out. And it just says no audit information. So then you find yourself going back in to put the diagnosis in. Is that just an MDT? Like, yeah. And I don't understand why it does that. So, and it's quite frustrating. So what I've started doing is on a different tracker, is writing down the ICD code, but you still have to figure it all out. You have to go back in and do it yourself again. So I don't know whether that's, I don't think it's an error because that's been around a long time, but it's quite frustrating.
It'd be good to sit and chat and understand that if that's okay,
Yeah,
because it might be an unintended design consequence on our part that's meaning you're having to go in and redo stuff, and that's not ideal.
Yeah,
So
because if I put it all in at the end of the month and I'm submitting the data, I'm like, yeah, I know I've put that diagnosis in, and I'll send the data off. And then when I go back in, the diagnosis has gone. I'm like, oh my God, have I just sent? I've not uploaded that diagnosis because it's gone.
Yeah.
So, and I'm relying on myself to go back 2 months behind to check that data to make sure the diagnosis is still in. 9 times it's not. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is there's a specific flow of data to do with the MDT. So when you're so how it works for your version is that the data in a patient record, as soon as you list them, it gets pulled into another table, which means you've got 2 different versions now. So if you change the actual patient record, it will get overwritten when you save the MDT recorded record. So that might be what's causing the problem.
we made some flow changes a release or two ago, didn't we? And it might be that, either the version you're on doesn't have that yet, or it might be the fact that the new version does something.
When you upgrade, you'll have a different flow because we have changed it.
Clatterbridge, and they've been discussed on that Tuesday, and I'm sending the referral on Wednesday, and the diagnosis is in there. Sorry, the diagnosis information at FDS, everything is not on for that trust to get that. So it's like I've had to go back in, and it's just it's a minefield, and it's annoying more than anything. So yeah, I don't know whether
there are ambitions to roll out e-tertiary amongst all the trusts here, which means that the data will flow from SCR to SCR along with the patient. But Clatterbridge have another platform, so there's a bit of a wrangle at the moment, and we just need to see how it comes out.
Thank you.
think we've got about 30 seconds if anyone's got one last question.
Before I do that, I think there's time for other questions later, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
of course.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.